afternoon, dear friends. Welcome to CEC live lectures. We are going to actually continue in the lecture series on spreadsheets that we have taken up in the previous two sessions. So today will be the third lecture in the series of spreadsheet. In today's series, we are going to continue with our discussion on functions in Excel. And today we are going to talk about two main categories of functions. One is the text functions and the other will be the logical functions. So as you are aware that Excel provides a robust collection of functions which can be used for various purposes, and the functions are divided into various categories. Like we have seen, there are financial functions, we've already talked about mathematical functions, we've talked about the statistical functions. Today we will be discussing about the text functions and a few of the logical functions. So basically the scope of the lecture will include the students of undergraduate courses of Delhi University, those who are doing spreadsheet at their BSc, BCom or BA computer application levels. So basically this lecture is aimed at catering to the needs of those students, but otherwise also the level of the lectures shall be basic to middle level of learning, so that it can benefit even the beginners and who want to take up a short course in spreadsheets. So the lecture is aimed at both the beginners as well as the moderate level learners. So basically we are going to talk about functions. So a quick recap of what are functions. So basically what is a function? A function is a formula. It's basically an equation that performs calculations in the various spreadsheet. So formulas, they always begin, we've already discussed this, that anything that you want to get calculated in Excel is always preceded by an equal to sign. So you always begin it with an equal to sign, and when you press the enter key, then you will get the value there. So if you don't put an equal to sign before a function or before a formula, then Excel is not going to calculate that value. So by putting an Excel sign, we are basically trying to tell Excel that the value for the following equation or for the value for the following expression has to be calculated and has to be put in the cell. I would also like to mention one thing here, that whenever you have a value which is calculated using a function or a formula in a particular cell, you can press the control and the single quote key and you can see the formula. So it's like a toggle, you can see the formula or you can see the value that the formula or the function is calculating. So basically functions which are used, which are Excel defined formulas, so they take the data that you select and enter and they perform calculations on them and return values. So just like we have a calculator on which you have some specific functions like plus, minus, divide, multiply or percentage, etc. So you just press the button and you provide the data and automatically the result is shown. So this also, Excel also provides you a same kind of interface. So you choose the correct function or you choose the correct name and you provide the arguments on which you want the calculation to be done. You press the enter key and the function will return the value. So even very complicated values can be returned by using the appropriate functions, as we have seen in the previous lecture. Like we have seen financial functions in which you can calculate the amount payable, the interest payable, the installment, etc. So all functions basically they have this common format, that you have to put an equal to sign, then you put the correct name, the Excel defined function name, and then you put in the data in parenthesis. So this is the standard form of all functions irrespective of the category of function. Equal to sign, the name of the function, and in parenthesis you put the data or you put the value, or you also call them the arguments, that is the data on which you want the function to act. So basically this is a standard format for all Excel functions that is used. So you can see here, like an example is shown here, you put is equal to sign, you put the name of the function, in this case say for example it is average, and then you put in the parenthesis whatever data you want. So Excel will calculate the value the function does, whatever calculation the function does will be taken forward on the set of values which are defined there. So basically we've also seen that how you can specify the range of values. So you can either give the arguments as numbers, but generally what we give is not the absolute value, but what we give is a reference number of the cell reference in which the data is held. So there are two ways, we've already discussed this also. There are two ways in which references can be given. Either you give comma separated values of references, or you can give a range, you can specify a range of values separated by a colon sign. So whatever value appears in that range of cell, the Excel function will be applied to that particular set of values, irrespective of what the data is in those cells. So basically if you change the data in the cell, then also your function will remain relevant. So this is one important thing. So how do you access functions in Excel? So this is how you access functions in case of Excel 2010. So basically you have the function bar, and here you can see the complete list of categories of all functions are there, and whatever function you want, whatever category function you want, you just click on that and you see the complete glossary of all the functions which are available in that specific category of functions. Right. So we can see here a number of functions which are available. The types of functions are available are mathematical, statistical, logical, financial, date and time functions are there, lookup functions are there, database functions are there, and text functions are there. So out of these we've already discussed mathematical, statistical functions, and today we are going to talk about logical and text functions. So there are a number of functionalities which Excel provides in terms of text related functionality and logical related calculations. So we will begin with the text functions. So there are a number of functions in Excel which are used to manipulate the text value. So anything which is not a number in Excel is a text. That is, anything which is put in double quotes becomes a text. So even if you put the number 1, 2, 3, 4 in double quotes, it will be treated as a text. It will not be treated as a number, it will be treated as a text. So there are a number of functions, and very useful functions are there in the text functions category in Excel, and we will also see specific examples where these functions become very important and where they are commonly used. So the functions, some of the functions that we will be discussing out of the text functions are right function, left, mid function, concatenate, upper, lower, and len function. Those who are familiar with other packages must have already used these functions, and if you haven't, then also you get a good acquaintance, because the same text functions are used in a variety of computer programming languages also, and in a variety of other software packages also. So once you are aware of the functions, then you can use them in, you have a broad understanding of what the function does, then you can use it in other platforms as well. So we first take the three functions, that is right, left, and mid function. So these are the three functions that we are going to talk about. So the right function, what it does is that it is used to isolate a specific number of characters from the right hand side of a text value. So basically when you want to trim the text, if you have a string, if you have a number of characters and you want only a few, only the first character or only a first two characters from the right hand side, then the function that you use is the right function. So this is similar to the rtrim function which is used in a number of other packages. So basically this is the syntax of the function. So you use right, in parenthesis you give the text. The text means what is your parent text on which you want to, from which you want to extract the number of characters, and then you specify how many characters you want to extract from the right hand side. So for example, if we have this Excel sheet, you can see here. So you see that you have a value in the A column and you are trying to extract 4 digits from the right hand side of the SSN number. So here what you use, the function that we are using is, we will write is equal to right, our parent value or our text value is in the cell A2 and we want to extract 4 digits, so we write 4. So down there you can see in the values view, it has extracted 4 values starting from the right hand side. So it is extracted 5, 6, 7 and 8. Similarly, the second example also shows the same thing, that you are extracting 4 values from the next cell. So, it is extracting these. So, basically in this case it is very simple. Write, you specify, you give the reference of the cell in which the text is held, or you can also specify the text, whatever, but generally we give the reference, and you specify the number of characters that you want to extract. Now, this kind of a system is very important, and this kind of a filtering or this kind of a trimming of text is important when you want to study certain codes and you want to study sub parts of the codes, etc. For example, in telephone numbers, if you want to know which cities, so then you can do the trimming from of the STD codes, etc., that is in the left side trimming. So, write number of characters is of course optional. So, the number of character parameters in the write function is optional, and if you do not specify it, then the default is 1. So, if you only write, if you only specify, you give the name of the function, that is you write is equal to write, and you give the reference for the text, then it will only extract the first character. But if you want to extract more than 1 characters, of course, then you have to specify the number of characters in the function. So, you can see here only the first character has been extracted, only the first character has been removed from the string, because no characters were specified in the parent function. Then we come to the next function, that is the left function. Now, the left function is similar to the way the right function works, but it will return the characters from the left hand side of the text value. So, whatever is your text value, the function will return the characters starting from the left hand side value. So, here again the syntax and all is the same for the left function also. So, you use left and you use the, you give the text, what is the text, and then you can do the trimming. The next function is the mid function. Of course, mid function will get you values from the middle of the text. So, in this case you need to specify a start position and the number of characters from where you want to, the number of characters that you want to extract. So, basically it will take 3 parameters. First is the text that you want to extract from, the position to start taking the new value from, and the number of characters to take from the new value. So, you can start from any position in the string and you can take any number of characters from that string. So, basically this is an example which extracts the characters from second till the fourth. So, second character onwards it will start and it will extract 3 characters starting from the second character. So, basically if your string is as it is given here, so it will start extracting from B and it will extract 3 characters, that is it will extract B, C and D. So, the result of this will be B, C, D, because it has the function that we have used is the mid function. We start from the second character and we write comma, that is how many characters you want starting from the second, we want 3 characters. So, you specify that. So, basically mid function will help you extract a specific number of characters starting from any position in the string. The left and the right functions, they will always begin from the left end or the right end of the string. The mid function can be utilized to extract any portion of the string basically. The next very important function that is used is the concatenation function. Concatenation function, which is also sometimes represented by an ampersand. So, concatenation basically in strings, when we say concatenate, we mean adding the 2 string, that is adding one string to the end of the other string, right. So, concatenation function is which is used is basically an ampersand function. There is no specific name for the function, it is simple AND. So, it is used to combine or concatenate 2 different text values. Of course, this is only applicable to text values. So, you can see here that you have some strings in the A column, some strings in the B column, and then you can form the full name by concatenating the string in the A column and the string in the B column by simply using the ampersand sign. So, but one thing is there, that there is no space in between the strings. So, when you combine the string in A2 with the string in B2, then it combines as one single word, whereas if it is a name, you would obviously want that a single space should come. So, in that case what you can do is that you can concatenate a literal, Literal means a fixed value which you can insert. So, for instance, you want to insert a space, so then in ampersand you can do it that way. So, basically you can, of course you can concatenate more than one string also, and for literals what you do is that you put the blank space in double quotation marks and then you use the concatenation operator. So, basically you can use the literal values to display the spaces and all. So, you can see here how it is being used, and when you are using the blank space here, so you write C2 ampersand, then you give a blank space and ampersand. So, both sides of the literal you have to give the ampersand. Wherever concatenation has to be done, wherever a string has to be appended to another string, you always have to put an ampersand sign on that. So, basically in other examples also we can see here C3 and then you are using a literal. Similarly, you can use other literals also. For example, if you want to concatenate a period sign or a dot, so then that also can be done here. So, you can see here this is simple concatenation where values have been added and spaces have been inserted in between. So, you can see spaces are inserted between each of these names here. So, next is, of course, this is the left functions example that we can see here. So, in this case again what we are doing is we are using two formulas, two functions in the same formula, that is we are trying to extract the first character of the left string and the first character of the right string. So, in this case, and then we are using the concatenate operator. So, here what we are doing is we are using the nesting of text functions in the same. So, what you will see here is in the result what you will see is the first character of that is the leftmost character of the first string and the leftmost character of the second string. So, in all this has been done and both these characters will be concatenated, that is there will be no space between either of those characters. So, you can see here the first character of each of the strings has been concatenated. So, first and last ka FL is coming, JD is coming and PS is coming. So, initials they have been put up like this. So, now putting all these things together, what we are trying to say is that you can you can put the initials, if you have the first name and the last name and you want to just store the initials, you can do that also. So, that can easily be done by putting a period sign, just like we had concatenated a space, you can concatenate a period sign in it. So, you just put the ampersand and you put the period sign. So, whatever you are putting within double quotes becomes a literal and that can be easily inserted in between the two. And in the lower example you can see initials have been combined, the result can be seen, the initials have been combined and a period has been inserted. So, this is how you can concatenate the strings, you can extract the string, extract a portion, or you can say you can trim a string and you can add literals to the string using the concatenate operators. So, basically we can use concatenate function also instead of the ampersand, both are the same. So, you can simply write A1 ampersand B1 ampersand C1, or you can write the name of the function, that is concatenate A1 B1 comma C1. So, it will do the same thing what you are doing with the ampersand sign. So, it can be left to the user's convenience and choice, whatever the user wants to choose, whether he wants to choose an ampersand sign or he wants to choose the concatenate function, the result is going to be the same. So, besides the left, right, middle and the concatenate function, there are three more very important text functions which are done. One is the lower function, the other is upper, and there is the length function. So, lower, upper are related to changing the case of the string, that is to changing the string to a lower case or changing a string to the upper case, and length function, as most of us are already aware, is used to find out the length or the total number of characters which are present in a string. So, how does a lower function work? So, you have a string in the cell A1. So, lower function will convert the text to lower case, upper function will convert the text to uppercase. So, you just have to give again an equal to sign, the name of the function, and within parenthesis you give the reference of the cell in which your string is contained. Now, here one thing is to be noted, that the string is not put in double quotes. Where you have your parent string or where you have your data, it has not been put in double quotes. Just in case if you have a number, then you need to put it in double quotes. If you have a number, you need to put it in double quotes, so as to tell Excel that this number is actually going to function like a string. Otherwise also, even if on numbers you apply the string functions, then they are treated as text only, they are treated as string. So, you can see here the entire text has been converted to lowercase letters and to uppercase letters, whatever the case may be, right. The len function, then it returns a numeric value. Len function will actually return the number of characters which are present in the text value, that is the total length of the string. So, in this case spaces are also included. One must always remember that in case of computer, space is always a character. So, here when you want to calculate the length of the string hello there, so it will count the space bar also. So, therefore, the length of the string is coming out to be 11, because you have 5 characters in the first word, 5 characters in the second word, and 1 character is the space. So, it comes to 11. So, the length of the total length of the string is coming out to be 11. Next, we are going to start with logical functions. This was all about the textual functions. So, in text functions, of course, we have discussed a number of functions which are related to modifying the text, to trimming the text, to finding out a specific number or to taking out specific number of characters from a given string, whether from the right hand side or from the left hand side or from the middle of the string. Then we also saw how we can add one string to the other string by using the concatenate function or by simply using the ampersand sign, how literals can also be added to the functions or how literals can be added to the string using the concatenate, and how you can use a nesting of functions also. So, basically this was a brief introduction of the text functions. More text functions are available which can always be seen in the glossary which comes along with the Excel. Now, we move on to the next very important category of functions which are used in Excel, which are known as logical functions. Now, we have already discussed arithmetical functions or mathematical functions. Now, what is the difference between mathematical functions and logical functions? The most important difference is that all mathematical functions will result into a number as the answer. The result of mathematical functions is always a number, but the result of logical functions is always a value which is true or false. So, those functions which return the value as true or false, they come under the name or under the umbrella of logical functions. So, logical functions are the functions which provide answers as true or false. So, basically it is a function which determines whether a condition is true or false is called as logical function. So, Excel supports where several logical functions such as and, or, not, false and true. So, in logical functions we will be talking about a number of functions which always give a value as true or false, that is we are going to test for several conditions. Logical functions means that we are going to check for conditions, and depending on the value, a value as true or false, whether the condition is true or the condition is false, the result is returned to the function. So, here we have a number of functions that we discuss in case of Excel. So, the very important function in Excel that is discussed is the if function. So, if function is uses a logical test to determine whether an expression is true or false, and then returns one value if true or another value if it is false. So, if function is the very common and a very important function which is used in spreadsheet applications, wherever a bifurcation or wherever a flow is or wherever there is a fork, that is, you have to make a decision based on a given expression. For example, in a very simple example, that if you are calculating the mark sheet, if you are preparing the mark sheet, then you would want to calculate the division of the student. So, if the marks are more than 60%, if the percentage is more than, greater than or equal to 60, the division will be first. In other cases, you can have other examples, like if the basic is a certain number, then the HRA is certain percent of basic. So, whenever we have calculations, we have number of conditions where one value determines the value of the other variable or other parameter in the Excel sheet. So, here we have seen that percentage determines the value of the grade, or percentage determines the value of the division, the value of the basic determines the value of the allowances which are paid in case of salary. Similarly, you have salesmen's commissions are there. So, depending on how many sales the salesman has made, the calculation of the commissions is done. So, wherever you have a situation like this, where one variable or one parameter or one field in the worksheet is determining the value of the other field, then you always use a if condition. So, basically logical test is constructed using a comparison operator, and that compares two expressions to determine if they are equal, not equal, or they are greater than or less than. So, basically logical operators, like we have mathematical operators, plus, minus, divide, multiply, modulus. Similarly, you have logical operators like equal to, greater than equal to, less than equal to, and not equal to. So, one can also make comparison with text strings. So, when you are comparing text strings, you just have to put them in quotation marks. So, when you are doing a comparison that whether a cell value is equal to a text, like whether the grade is equal to A or it is equal to B and things like that, you can do the comparison. The only care that you must take is that the strings must be enclosed in double quotation marks, right. So, when we are talking about logical functions, so we will be discussing here the AND function, we will be talking about the false function. So, false function will always return a false value. The if function, we will be discussing it at length, specifies a logical test to perform. If error function returns a value that you specify if a formula evaluates to an error. The not function, it reverses the logic if of the argument, that is not true will become false, not false will become true. The OR function will return true if any of the arguments which are specified is true, and the true function will always return the logical value true. So, when we will discuss each of these functions in detail and how they are used in the given situations to calculate or to do the calculation in case of Excel. So, the first function, the simplest function that we are going to talk about is the true and the false function. So, basically when we say true or false, so a logical value can have only, a logical variable can have only two values. It can be either a true or a false value, right. So, there can be specific conditions where the values are true, and there can be specific condition where the values are false. For example, 2 is greater than 3 is false, 1 is less than 0 is false, right. So, similarly you can have several conditions which will always give the value as true. So, there are a number of operators which we just discussed, that is less than, greater than, less than equal to, greater than equal to and not equal to, which are generally used for comparisons between logical values, between text values, between numerical values. So, any kind of values are compared using these given logical operators. So, you can see here in this Excel sample worksheet, we are showing a simple logical comparisons which will return the value as true or false. So, you can see here we have numerical values in the cell A2 and A3, and we are doing the comparison. So, if it is 1 and 2, and then certain conditions will be true, some conditions will be false. So you can just simply write a condition without even using the if function. You can just write is equal to A2 is less than A3, A4 is A2 is greater than A3. So it can return the value depending on the values you have assigned in A2 and A3. If you will change the values which are given in A2 and A3, accordingly the values calculated here will change. So if you change the value using the same formula, different values are calculated. So we would now the first function that we are going to talk about after discussing the concept of true and false is the if function. So basically in the if function, it will returns one value if the condition you specify evaluates to true and another value if the condition evaluates to false. So we use if function to conduct conditional test on values and formulas. So the syntax or the way the if function is used is again similar to the way we have been using other functions. So you put an equal to sign, then in the parenthesis you specify the logical test, that is the condition is specified, what is your test, what is the condition which has to be evaluated, then separated by a comma you specify the value if true, that is if the logical test is true, the value which is to be assigned is specified, and then you can specify after a comma value if false, that is if your test is false, what is the value that is to be assigned. Now you can see that value if false here is actually an optional value. So you can also have a if statement with only two parameters, that is the logical test parameter and the value if true parameter, right. So you can see here simple conditions have been given, like if A1 is equal to 10, then 20 comma 30, that is in this case what we are doing is that if the value of the cell of the data in the cell A1 is 10, then the value assigned to the cell where the if condition is written will be 20, otherwise the value will be 30. Another you can see here is the use of text within the if condition. So we are writing here if the value in the cell A1 is equal to 100, then good is written, otherwise if it is 80, then fair is written. Now what you see in the second example is basically a use of nested if statements. Now nested if statement means when you have more than one value, more than two values which are specified giving a condition. So you have one value when you check the condition, there are two conditions. So we are saying if A1 is equal to 800, the value assigned should be good, and if A1 is equal to 80, the value assigned should be fair. So you are basically you have to check two conditions, that the value if of A1 is either 100 or 80. So in this case what you will need is at least you will need two conditions, two if statements. So in both the if statements you are specifying the logical test, you put a comma, you give the value if true. Then in the first if statement, in the false part what you are writing is the another if condition, another test, that is if the value is 100, of course the value good is assigned, but in the false part it will check if the value is not 100, it will check whether the value is 80, if yes, then the value fair is assigned. So basically in the third example also we can see this, here you have three conditions, that is if the value of A1 is 100, the value is good, the value assigned to the cell will be good. If the value of A1 is 80, the value assigned to the cell will be fair, and the third condition is if the value is A1 is 70, then the value will be poor. And you can see that at the end you will close all the parentheses. If you have three if statements, so in the end you will close three parentheses. So therefore we say that these are nested if statements, that is in the false part of one if you are putting another condition, and then in the false part of the second if you are putting a third condition. So this kind of statements are called nested if statements, and basically the rule of thumb that we use is that for n conditions the number of if statements will be n minus 1, that is if you have 5 conditions, then minimum you need is 4 if statements to be put in the formula, to be put in the function. So, here you can see the same calculation has been done here. In this you can see that the letter grades are assigned to numbers using the following key. So, the key is given here, depending upon the marks the grade is assigned, and you can see the formula has been put here for grade. So, the formula which is used is depending upon the marks, and we are comparing the values in the cell for the marks, that is what is the value of marks, depending on that you are specifying the value for grade. Now, because this grade is a text, A, B, C, D is a text, so therefore you are always putting it in double quotes. Text, whether you are checking in the condition or whether you are putting it as a result of the check, you always put it in double quotes, right. So, and you are putting the formula in the relevant cell wherever you want the value to be put up, there you are putting the condition. So, this is a very simple way in which conditions, complicated conditions can be checked using the simple if function and use of nested if statements so that you can check for multiple conditions in one statement itself. So, basically in the if statement you can also use the formula builder. For initially, if you are not sure of how the if statement is to be used, you can use the formula builder. So, in the logical statements you can choose the if function, and in the if function you can choose the three values, that is in the logical test you can specify what is the test, what is the condition that you want to check, like you are putting it here, if A1 is greater than A3 is your condition. If this condition is true, you will write value if true, I am happy. If this condition is false, you will write I am sad. So, in the true condition you will have one value, in the false condition you will have the other value. So, initially you can use the formula builder, but you can also, if you are comfortable, it is always good to write the function directly, right. So, you can just type in here, you have the values here in the cells A2 and A3, and you can write the condition here that if A2 is greater than A3, comma, in double quotes you write I am happy, comma, in double quotes you write I am sad. So, what you are doing here is in the comma separated you are specifying the value if true, if the logical condition is true, what is the value to be put in, what is the value to be shown, if the value is false, what is the value to be shown. Now, in this case, since the condition was true, therefore, your cell is showing the value which is true, right. So, you can also have, of course, you can always have a numeric result instead of a text result. I already said that text result is in double quotes, numeric result is always a number. So, you can see here that in this case you will have a number. Besides having a number, you can also have expressions, like if you want that certain value is calculated, then you can put in the if statement, you can also put the calculated value in the value if true and value if false. Like for example, where we are doing the salesman commission example. So, in that case, if you are calculating the commission based as a percentage of the sales, so there you can do this calculation also. So, instead of writing as the number, you can also write it as the as an expression. So, basically in the if statement, in the true and false part, you can have an expression, you can have a numeric value, or you can have a text value. Text value will always come in double quotes, numeric value and expressions can be given directly, right. So, the next set of functions that we are going to see is three functions basically, that is the AND function, the OR function and the NOT function. So, AND, OR and NOT, these are very important functions because they help us in combining the results, in combining the multiple conditions. So, we have already seen that AND, OR and NOT, in this we can specify a number of conditions, and depending upon the function the result is given. So, the first function that we discussed is the AND function, that is the value is true, that is when both the conditions or all the conditions or all the expressions they evaluate to true, only then the result is true. If any one of the expression evaluates to false, then the result of the AND calculation is going to be false. So, for example, in this case we have given a few statements, and if all the statements are true, only then the value is going to be otherwise the value is going to be false. So you can use, again you can use the formula builder. So you have all these different logical conditions, like you say if A2 is less than A3 and B2 is less than B3. So if both the conditions are true, only then the result will be true. Now in this case we can see that B2 is less than B3 is a condition which is false. So in this case the result is going to be false. If any of the conditions is false, the result is going to be false. And you can see here the syntax is same. You write is equal to, you write the name of the function, that is and then you can give the condition separated by comma. So you give comma separated conditions in this case. Now comma separated conditions can be, how many can be given? Yes, they can be 255 conditions which you can give separated by commas, and Excel will check all the 255 conditions. So all the conditions must be true for the result to be true. If any one of the conditions out of the given 255 conditions is false, then the result of the statement will be false. So basically it means first condition plus second condition plus third plus nth condition all must satisfy the true value, only then the result can be true. So we can use AND function also within the if function. This is the real application of the AND function, where we have multiple conditions. So you can use the AND function inside the if function, and this is called the nested function call. Again, one function inside the other function is always called a nested function. So whether it is one if inside the other if, or it is an AND inside the other. So here what we are checking is, if you look at the inner parenthesis, so you are checking and A2 is greater than A3 and B2 is not equal to B3. So the two conditions which are tested are A2 is greater than A3, B2 is not equal to B3. So if both these conditions are true, so your logical statement is the one which is appearing in red color, that is and A2 is greater than A3, B2 is not equal to B3. If both the conditions are true, then the value of the correct value, or the value if true, will be 500. And if these parameters, or if these two value, any one of these is false, then the value will be 1000. So basically the parenthesis here, the outer parenthesis will belong to the if statement, and the inner parenthesis will belong to the AND statement. All functions in Excel, they have a parenthesis, but when we have nested parenthesis or when we have nested functions, then the parenthesis, they are of the inner functions will be closing first, and of the function which is the first one will be closing at the last. So the parentheses which are the first to open are the last to close here. So you can see here in this case, in the if function, in the logical test, what we are giving is the conditions which are put in as with the AND function, and then you can give some value if true and the value if false. So basically multiple conditions can be combined in the if statement. You can also have multiple if statements, but this is a more concise and a smarter way of combining multiple conditions using the if statement. So you can see here how logical conditions if and have been combined, and a more cohesive and a more crisp kind of a condition, a crisp kind of a logic has been written. So instead of having multiple if statements, the use of AND will facilitate in combining the other conditions together, combining a number of conditions together. So basically the AND function, it can take up to 255 characters, and it will evaluate to true only when all of the parameters, if you have 255 parameters, all the parameters should be true, only then the condition will evaluate to true, otherwise it will evaluate to a false. The next function that we do is the OR function, OR and NOT function basically. So in the OR function, what we see is, the OR function means any of the conditions is true, then the result will be true. That is, there is a choice, either this or that, any one is true. That is, if we say something like if it rains or if it is not sunny, we will go for a picnic. So, whenever either of the conditions is true, the action will take place, and not is going to always reverse the result. Not function is always going to do the reverse calculation. That is, if the condition is evaluating to true, it will evaluate to false, and if the condition is false, it will evaluate to true. So, you can see here again OR function also takes any number of parameters. So, we have seen it can take the same as the AND function, it can take 255 parameters, 255 conditions can be specified. It returns true if any of the parameter evaluates to true, otherwise it returns false. So, whatever the conditions are, even if a single condition out of the given conditions will be true, the result will be true. So, they can, the and the OR functions can be compared to logical addition and multiplication conditions. So, if we assume that the parameters are in the values of 0 and 1, if we say true is 1 and false is 0, then OR will mean that we are adding. So, even if there is one single one, the value will come to 1, but in case of AND we are multiplying. So, even if there is 1 0, the result will be a 0, that is the result will be a false. So, this is the result. Then NOT takes only one parameter, that is it returns the opposite of the value of the parameter, that is it returns false if the parameter value is true, and it will return a true if the parameter value is false. So, this kind of a structure is sometime required to check whether the calculation or whether the condition has been evaluating correctly or not, or to negate the condition, or to find out the opposite of the value of the parameter. Sometimes you want to check whether the value is 0 or not. So, you check if the value is not 0, then you want to carry out something. So, you can write if A2 is not 0, like that. So, example can be here, if we see some examples of complex nested function calls we can see here. So, here we are using multiple logical functions. So, we are using the if function, then we are using an AND, then in the AND we are using an OR function also. So, basically if we move in from the innermost OR function, so we are specifying two conditions, that is B2 is equal to B3, comma C2 is less than C3. So, these are the two conditions. So, if any of the condition is true, the value will be true, and then you check that and A2 is less than, A2 is greater than A3. So, if the value of the OR condition is true and the value of A2 is greater than A3 is also true, then 500 will be assigned. Otherwise, if any one of the values is false, that is the value of the inner OR expression is false or the value of the AND expression is false, then the value will be false. So, it will return 1000. So, basically this is showing a complex nesting of functions where you can use a NOT function also, that is with the if function you can use a NOT function. You can say you are combining conditions using AND, OR, and then you are finally negating it using NOT, and then you are checking with the if condition. So, a number of complex conditions can be built depending on the application, depending on the requirement. Now, there is another logical function which is also very important and which is used very commonly. That function is known as the isblank function. Isblank function basically is used to check whether the value in a specific cell contains some data, or whether the cell whether a specific cell contains a data or it is blank. For example, there are instances where you want that if no value has been specified, then a certain value can be assigned, because if no value is assigned, if the cell is blank, then it is considered to be a 0, and then if you do the calculations with the 0, if you do a multiplication with the 0, it can lead to problems. So, therefore, it is very imperative sometimes in big calculations to check whether a specific cell has been left blank or not, and if it is blank, then a remedial action, error check kind of a thing can be done. So, isblank is a very important function here. So, isblank function, it returns true if the value is blank and false otherwise. So, in this case you can see this is a simple worksheet which has been shown here. Here you see that the price is specified and the quantity cell has been left blank. So, blank means that the value is equal to 0 and we are doing the calculation here, that is we are doing we are multiplying the price with the quantity, but to check that the quantity should not be 0 we are using an if condition and we are checking that if the cell B2 is blank then the value to be assigned is 1, otherwise whatever is the value can be assigned. So, if B2 cell is having a blank value then it is to be treated as 1, so that the total calculation does not go wrong, so that it does not show a 0 value as total and the error is not shown here. So, therefore, we are checking here for any kind of blank values are there. So, basically is blank is used to check the value in the cell with in continuation or in connection with the if statement. Generally, when the value is considered to be blank, when the value is checked to be blank, then a specific number can be assigned so that calculations can be facilitated. So, again you can see here the same thing has been done to calculate if the price is shown here and if the quantity shows a blank value, the total value can be calculated here. So, this kind of checking can prevent a lot of error correction, can prevent a lot of exceptions which can occur here and some kind of calculation errors which will take place in this case. So, basically in today's lecture we have discussed a number of logical functions and a number of text related functions. So, I hope these functions are going to help you. We shall be continuing on spreadsheets in the next lecture. Till then, thank you.